Greetings. This is TK Trav, aka Travis Magus, here with LVX777. Today, I figured that perhaps we'll live stream for just a little bit, and if you have any specific questions about spirituality or the occult or anything related, this would be a good time to ask those questions. I'll do my absolute best to provide answers. So peace, and welcome to everybody who is present currently and present after the stream is over with. Seeing as to how these things work in a timeless fashion. Tian Pomeroy, peace and good evening. So it's pretty interesting that a lot of the work of a magus or spiritualist or whatever has to do with inorganic beings, has to do with entities that do not possess an organic body. And one thing that is not really considered in that work is that most inorganic beings do not have what we call a soul. In fact, it is for this very reason that human beings are of the center of attention when it comes to these type of entities. It's also important to note that most inorganic beings, if not all inorganic beings, cannot directly force you to do anything. The greatest skill is in being able to influence. And the ones who are the easiest to influence are the ones who are the least aware of themselves and the least aware of what they are and how they function. So you'll find that a lot of people who express fears, concerns about working with spirits, demons and entities, and even angels for that matter, are typically people who are not very self-aware. This is why it's so important to make sure that you're doing shadow work before and in process of working with inorganic beings, because it's those aspects of the shadow and the aspects of self that you're unaware of that are the very buttons that are being pressed for this said influence. Koi Sul, peace. Baptiste, peace, my fellow cyclomate. Aldin, peace. Kashigi, peace. Garrett Patterson, peace and greetings. So yeah, main thing is, don't really have a specific topic for tonight, but I do want to kind of open the floor in case anybody had any questions or topics of discussion that they might wanted to have some clarity on. Vostol Lord the movie says, I planned to go to Austin for the eclipse. Car broke down, friends didn't want to go, and the day of it was actually cloudy in Houston. Then I saw all the spiritual teachers say, don't look at the eclipse. Why? Is the why pertaining to why spiritual teachers said don't look at the eclipse, or why all these things broke down so that you weren't able to make the trip? Which part of your question is the why referring to? Mr. West, peace. Both LOL. Okay, well, that question is very general, but if you had to ask me that particular question, I'd say that the fact that your car broke down and your friends didn't want to go, and the day of it was cloudy, is a major sign that it isn't necessary for you to look at the eclipse with your eyes. I mean, if your intention was for spiritual purposes, then you should be aware that what you're seeing on the outside is only a degraded reflection of what's happening on the inside. So maybe this was a great opportunity for you to sit at home and gaze at the eclipse that was happening within. In the same way that people talk about astrology and all these different planetary influences and how they have an effect on your life, on your mind, on your relationships, this is no different. The eclipse is no different. As far as spiritual teachers saying don't look at the eclipse, I can't speak for any of those guys or gals, but I mean, you're also dealing with entities on higher densities, right? Long story short, this eclipse situation is an entity, and this is a feeding time. This is a feeding time. So maybe it's a good idea to not be outside to be fed upon. That's what I would say. Corrupted Catnip says a bunch of people kind of made a big deal about the eclipse, saying it was the end of the world and the coming of Jesus. I think it was the sun smiling at us. Yeah. I mean, it's a human addiction to always look for a great meaning behind things like this. We're always looking for the end of the world. We're always looking for Jesus to come back. It's nothing new. This happens every year for several hundreds of years without a break. From Y2K to December 12th, 21st, 2021. Nothing new. If anything, that should be a lesson eventually for you to stop getting duped into the hype. Like I said, these things are only degraded reflections of what's actually happening within. So it's easy to run outside, spend some money on some paper glasses, and look at the sun and say, "Oh, it was cool," and then go home. But did you take that same amount of effort to look at what was happening within your own makeup, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually? Did you take the same amount of effort to look at that? Ryan Lane says, did you ever meet the time traveler that you met when you were a kid? Not yet. Still working on it. Not yet. Koisul says, I've dived into Golden Dawn magic, and the first initiations are in the elements. I realized that I'm integrating the four worlds through these invocations. Self-help on steroids. Lots of shadow work. Absolutely. Absolutely. And see, the thing with these elementals and these inorganic beings is that particular level of inorganic being, the elementals, they are life forms without an assigned task, without an assigned purpose. So it's literally up to the magician, the magus, the practitioner to assign purpose to these entities, to set them into motion. That's part of the beginning stages of your work. Because you've been doing it already. You just haven't been doing it consciously. You haven't been doing it with intent. Hazard Pie, peace and welcome. Fresh out the frying grease. Hot crispy donuts, my favorite. Corrupted Catnip says, Trav, where would you recommend I start with shadow work? I'd recommend you start exactly where you are. To stop thinking for a moment, stop trying to do anything for a moment, and start working backwards. Start tracing the fruit back to the root. So in other words, look at the things that you're attracted to. Look at the type of thoughts that you think repetitively. Look at your behaviors. Look at your habits. Just stop and take a snapshot of yourself and then start tracing back. Why do I do this? Well, why do I do this? Well, why do I do this? Right? And start with the basic answers, right? Why do I like to wear red? Oh, because it's my favorite color. Well, why is it my favorite color? When did it start being my favorite color? Right? Keep asking these questions until you start to hit an emotional point. It's like you're digging, right? You're digging for oil. Once you hit oil, it's going to spray all over the place. So in this case, you can start with any aspect, any pattern, any habit of yourself, and try your best to dig as deeply as possible until you hit an emotional outpouring. That's the best place to start. Because once you're able to do that with some of the mundane habits, you can start working on some of the deeper, more emotionally volatile parts of yourself. But I would say start with those things. Batiz says the eclipse plus retrograde is throwing me, what I'm hoping, back into alignment. The last time I was dragged this bad was in 2020 Scorpio, Sun, and Aries. And see, it's really good to be able to track your own astrology, right? Pay attention to the things that are happening in your life, and then pay attention to what's currently in the sky, right? Where's the sun? Where's the moon? Where's Mercury? Just mark it down. Just notate it. What I do is whenever I take notes, whenever I'm studying, or whenever I have some idea or some channel and I write it down, I also write down the date and the time so that if something comes of these notes, if something comes of these ideas or these channels, I can look back at when I wrote them down, check the time, and see what was happening astrologically. When you start paying attention to these types of things, you can start to track patterns and associate them with the movement of the cosmos. C Main, peace. Ray, peace, peace. MC Maestro, peace. MC Maestro asks, trying to adjust how I stand in relation to my reality. The outer definitely don't match with the inner. Got any advice? So I would say probably a great place to start is to take a snapshot of pure instances of both realities, right? Take a snapshot of yourself while you're in your inner world, when no one else is around, and you're doing your thing. So become aware, become suddenly aware of yourself when you're in that inner world that you deem as incongruent. And just take note of what's happening. What are you doing? What are the beliefs that are running through your head? What are you believing about yourself? What are you believing about the world? Why are you doing what you're doing? How are you continuing to do that? Then take a snapshot of yourself in the outside world. Maybe when you're going to the gas station to put gas in your car, maybe when you're at work or at school. Matter of fact, especially when you're around other people, when you feel a certain sense of incongruence inside versus what you're doing out there. All right, take a snapshot of both of those. Then compare them. Then ask the critical questions. What am I believing in this outside world? What am I believing about myself? What am I believing about these people? Say, for example, if when you get around certain people and you start behaving differently, you start talking differently, maybe moving differently, start asking the questions. What do I believe about my relationship with them? What do I believe about them? What do I believe about me? That's a good place to start. Because you'll find when you start to uncover these beliefs, that's a whole lot that's a whole lot better way to get to the why instead of just asking why. If you just ask why, you're letting the conscious mind, the logic mind, give you any kind of answer to shut you up and to shut this process down. But when you ask the questions about what you believe about the world in those moments, you're pushing the monkey mind off in a different direction to keep itself busy. And even if it hears me say this and it knows this, you still have a better chance at preventing it from blocking your progress when you turn thought inward on itself. Let me know if that helps or if it doesn't. Aldin says, Peace, Trav. Handbook for the New Paradigm has been very thought-provoking for me. Do you feel that with magic, it's best to have a grand vision you pursue or to break it down into short-term goals? I think the best bet most definitely is both, right? And segmenting both into its appropriate place. So definitely have this long-term goal. First off, identify what kind of person you are. Identify what kind of person you are. Some people are bigger picture people. Some people are short-term, right now people. Identify what you are and be honest. You're either a bigger picture person and you get lost in the details, or you're a short-term person and it's very difficult to come up with a grand vision because you're going to need both for success. And you're going to need to be able to oscillate in between both. That's the ecology check. When I say ecology check, I mean like just like there is an ecology in the forest, you've got trees, you've got rain, you've got frogs and snakes and mammals and insects. They all work together in harmony and the ecosystem flourishes. So do an ecology check. Have your long-term goal and also have your short-term goals. And every time that you're taking action towards either one, make sure that they both fit together in harmony. That's really where my saying, is it useful and appropriate, comes into play. Because is it useful to who? Is it appropriate for what? Is it useful to the long-term goal? Is it appropriate for the long-term goal? Useful and appropriate. Let me know if that answers your question or not. Ooh, from this app, I can ban users in their comments. Nice. Can't wait to test that out. Fuck around and find out. My trigger figure is itching. No monster today. We're on the NOS. We're on the NOS. NOS is actually well, I like NOS just as much as Monster. Unicorn coffee first. Okay, let's see what else we have. Dan Pomeroy asks, what's your view on Saturn? Why is it so highly regarded on the tree and occult? It's always at the top. I have a jaded relationship with it. I want to fix, I think, because of Saturn people controlling me. Okay, so start at the bottom. Saturn people. What are you using to categorize Saturn people? And could it be that maybe the criteria for that categorization isn't the best criteria? Because in truth, we all have Saturn aspects, don't we? Saturn was in the sky when each and every one of us were born, right? So all of us have Saturn aspects. No one is a Saturn person any more than anyone else. Saturn has presidency over certain patterns in nature, just like Mars does or any other planet. The moon has presidency over certain patterns in nature. Just to keep it simple, when the moon is full, the tides rise, not only in the oceans, but also in the animals with blood. Doctors prefer not to do surgery under the full moon because people bleed more. Did you know that? So all these different planets have presidency over specific patterns in our lives. So perhaps first realign what you define as a Saturn person. Next, when you think about Saturn, maybe take a study, a refresher for yourself about what Saturn has presidency over. Most people, especially in today's day and age, don't like being told what to do. We don't like discipline. We don't like to be challenged. We don't like difficult situations. A lot of those things are under the presidency of Saturn. So a lot of people are afraid of Saturn. Yet without discipline, without structure, without solid form, without gravity, we would live in useless and inappropriate chaos. Let me know if that answers your question or not. Peace curve. Ultra instinct. Peace, peace. Ace, peace. Good to see you. Jay Baldale, peace, good evening. Peace, Stephen. Stephen says, peace and blessings, everyone. Trav, thank you for narrating The Magician. I'm learning so much. Yeah, that's a great book to really get introduced to some of these concepts, right? Don't forget about what Brother Panic brought to the table. People speak of Bobby Hemmett damn near every day. Don't forget about Brother Panic. He really did add a very strong layer of understanding when it comes to the occult for modern times. I was watching a Brother Panic video earlier today, and it's funny because you know how most people sit down and prepare to watch like a whole season of a series? That's kind of like that for me with Brother Panic, you know. Sit down, get comfortable, maybe start doing the laundry or some chores and put on some Brother Panic, you know. It's funny, the video I was listening today was done like 4 or 5 years ago, and he was talking about some of the stuff that actually is happening currently. He was specifically talking about the relationship of Hollywood comedy, mentioning Cat Williams versus Kevin Hart. A lot of the things that Cat Williams actually did come out and say in January. Brother Panic was talking about this 4 years ago. But there's obviously a whole lot more to this video and question. Mr. West says, question. When practicing and studying alchemy magic and occult knowledge, is it better done as a group or done alone? Okay, well, just like I mentioned before about the bigger picture and the small term goals oscillating up and down, first identify, are you a group motivated person? In other words, let me rephrase that. Are you an externally motivated person or are you an internally motivated person? Right? This is not a good or a bad thing. You are either externally motivated or internally motivated. Look at what you've accomplished in your life, big and small. The things that motivated you, was it external? Was it something that you heard, something someone said? Did other people motivate you or say something to you that got you moving? Or was it an internal motivation? Did you just wake up one day and say, you know what, I'm going to do this? Everybody is more one or the other. So identify that first. Second, understand that when it comes to group working, your intention has to be figured out first and foremost. There are a lot of people who, you know, are just church folks, right? They go to the gathering and they enjoy the presence of everyone else and they're just happy to be a part of it. That's fine. And there's other people who have specific goals and specific intentions that they want to do personally. That's also fine. When it comes to the group dynamic, there is use for it. When it's individual practitioner, it's used for it also. There's things that you can do in a group that are difficult to do alone. And there's things solo that are difficult to do in a group. Identify the benefits for both, for you specifically. What I found is that when you have a network of people, if one of the things you're trying to develop is psychic ability, it's my understanding that it happens a whole lot faster when there are multiple people focused on the same goals. Because guess what? Now you have people to test it with, to experiment with, to get feedback from. We all have psychic propensity. And when you have a group to work with, now you can check the results. You can do tests. So there's benefits for both. The question isn't whether or not group work or solo work is best. The question is, how well and how deep do you understand your goals, your intentions? Let me know if that answers your question or not. Peace, Star Lion. Mr. West says, yes, Bobby Hammett and Brother Panic. I've been watching and learning a lot from them. Also, Phil Valentine. Yeah. Keep watching Phil Valentine as well. A lot of these older lectures, like, they still ring true. They're not like black music or movies to where it becomes outdated quickly. No, these are timeless lectures. And these are all subject matter that it doesn't matter when you talk about it. It's always relevant. But it's especially relevant when you're on the level to understand it. I mean, let's be real. All of us that watched those videos, Brother Panic lectures, Bobby Hemmett lectures, Phil Valentine lectures, etc., all of us were at a lower level of understanding than we are today. Right? Back then when we watched those videos, we were on a lower level of understanding than we are today. So I imagine what you'll discover when you go back to some of those lectures, now that you understand these concepts better. Ultra Instinct says, I'll never forget how he shut down a live just because I said I like Peace Cobbler. That was you. That was you. I remember that. I didn't see it live, but I saw the replay. Now that's funny. It's a small world. It's a small internet. Peace Curve, if I didn't say peace already. Curve says, hey Trav, my question is, I want to reach newer spiritual levels, but at times I get stuck with what is not beneficial while on this journey, enjoying human reality while still doing deep work. Sometimes I want to experience relationships, but have a hard time connecting because of the things I'm learning. At times I feel like it's not needed also. Yeah, I know what you mean. So it's, again, just like with the previous 2 or 3 questions, you got to identify where you stand. Are you somebody that needs these external relationships to develop, right? Many of us require that external feedback, that validation. And validation is frowned upon, when people talk about personal work and all that. But until you're ready to expand past getting validated, you need to discover a way to give it to yourself, or at least wean yourself off of being validated by other people. It's definitely a weakness that is definitely exploited. And if you're someone that needs that validation, don't starve yourself because you're only going to hurt yourself. Wean yourself off of it while you're learning how to give yourself that validation. Not saying that you specifically are someone that's searching for validation from other people, but that's an example of what I mean. These human connections, they serve as a symbol to allow us to express what we have inside. So with that being said, since these human relationships are only a symbol to express what's inside, you've already have the ingredients for what's happening between you and the other person. You already have the ingredients to make that circuit connect within yourself without an external symbol. Eventually you'll figure out how to do that. But until you do, recognize what it is that you feel that you need when seeking these relationships. Recognize what you feel that you need and gradually work on figuring out how to give it to yourself. Because guess what? You're going to be a much more incredible partner when you don't need the other person in a desperate way. I'm not calling you desperate, but what I'm saying is that when there's a need that you have and you have convinced yourself that you can only get it from this other fallible human being, again, you're setting yourself up for being exploited. But when you don't have that, when you realize that you are self-sufficient, now you can focus all your energies on giving. Then you can perhaps heal your partner, or even better, you'll attract someone else who's on that same level of personal development as you. The animal body still feels that it needs to have certain experiences. And it's correct, right? That's valid. But think of it as like a parent to a child. The child feels like it needs all the ice cream in the refrigerator right now. But as the parent who bought it, you know that it's best to give your child some in a reasonable amount after dinner, right? Consider the relationship between your personality and the animal body. Jabal Hill says, speaking of which, when are we starting cyclomancy? Soon, very soon. I'll be giving the official date, hopefully sometime this week, next week. Kevros SS God, peace, peace. Anna Molly, peace. My favorite ginger. Oops, my favorite fairy. Or both. Good evening, Moby. Peace, peace. That peach cobbler, he was talking about peach cobbler. He was trolling the people talking about peach cobbler. And then he comes in and says, I like peach cobbler. Why the fuck would you say that? That's what Panic said. Oath, peace, and greetings. Al Dickey, that's my real name. Good evening. Ram O, peace. Give me a question. Give me a question. Somebody asked me something about spirituality. That's my real name, nigga. That was a classic moment. You had to be there. I don't even remember which video that was on. It was a book read for sure. That was like a troll, but it wasn't a troll. Have you tried the lasagna? It's my favorite. Do you have your passport? Did you get your shots? Santriez Taylor, peace. All right, so really, I was thinking very hard about a good topic for tonight's discussion, and while I did have a lot of ideas, they mostly came through very disjointed. So I had some ideas, but I wasn't really able to put it all together for a conversation. So instead, I decided to allow this time for the wonderful people such as yourself to ask questions, perhaps dealing with what part of your journey that you're currently on. So if you have any of those questions, feel free to ask them. Or even just interesting topics about what you're working on. Starline asks, what could flying in a dream mean? I was very lucid, and yet it was a great feeling. Well, to tell you the truth, man, I think the best interpretation of that is going to be given by you. Now, here's why. When we talk about dreams, what we're really talking about is getting a closer glimpse at the truer nature of reality. And the true nature of reality is not a thing, but simply a movement. It's movement of prana, movement of kundalini. That's what life is. Movement of kundalini. Now, because that is something so abstract and damn near impossible to describe in language terms, it's easier to describe in image terms. So what actually happens is when you experience this movement of prana that's always happening and you're always experiencing it, you take that movement in prana and your subconscious mind attempts to translate it into terms that you can identify with easier. So you're going to be given different images and different symbols. Now, for a mind that is not very refined or very self-aware, you're going to look at the dream and take it literally and think, oh, look, there's pink elephants and earthquakes and giant buildings coming out of the ocean. But that wasn't what's actually happening. That's what you translated. What was actually happening was extremely abstract. So what you have to do is you have to backtrack. You have to find the symbol that your subconscious mind gave you as the image. And you have to ask yourself, what does that mean for me? What experiences, what emotions do I have attached to flying? What does flying translate to in my symbol vocabulary? Mine, not anyone else's. Because what I'm going to tell you what flying means only means that to me, not to you. And the same thing is happening in our waking lives, just on a more dense, slow level, right? Even science and psychology will tell you what we're experiencing is not reality. The map is not the territory. For example, what you think that you see with your eyes is only a creation within a very limited span of frequencies. Red, infrared, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet, ultraviolet. That's a very tiny slice of the entire spectrum of vibrations. So we just take from that, right? And that's not even what you process. That's just what your eyes pick up. Once your eyes pick that up, again, the subconscious mind searches for symbols to assemble and put together meaning, or I should say put together an image. It's the conscious mind that then comes back and puts meaning to that image. So the same thing is happening right now. Same thing is happening right now. But in the dream, it's in more of a tenuous state. It's more malleable. And you have the opportunity to change those things, communicate back and forth. So ask yourself, what does flying mean in your symbol dictionary? Ram O says similar thing, Starlight. I actually got inspired from a master who taught me, and then I suddenly flew. Was wondering what that meant. So that's another thing, right? That's great. You added context to that, right? He just said flying. You gave context to why you were flying. So even that context is a symbol, right? Look at the relationship between you and a master. How do you feel about that? Some people don't really like authority. Some people don't like to be told what to do. Some people feel that they need guidance, right? So different people are going to feel different ways about that symbol. Relationships are a symbol. Just like when I was talking earlier to the person who asked the question about relationships. These relationships that we have with other people, they're symbols and they mean something to us. That's why some people hold on tightly to relationships that don't serve them anymore, because to them it's better than not having anything. Some people feel like, I'm not healthy or I'm not an adult unless I'm in a relationship with somebody, even if it's toxic. What's the symbol of that relationship to you? That's how you break the stuff down. Ultra Instinct says, question, been watching Bobby. Ran across a couple where he said rebel against nature. But all the stuff I'm doing is to create a tighter bond. Any idea why he would say that? So I guess I'd probably have to see, more of the context of what he's talking about. But if I could deduce based on what I've seen from Bobby, if I had to just assume based on what you just said, his reference to nature in that would probably be about the fact that this is an illusion, right? This is the product of what I just mentioned, an interpretation of a vibration, not the reality. Even nature is a dense expression of an unmanifest pattern, right? The higher up you go in vibration, the more unmanifest it is. The more manifest it is, the further away it is from source, from soul, from reality. Another characteristic of nature is that it is locked into patterns. Nature is going to be locked into its patterns with or without your involvement. Part of what magic is learning to master those patterns so that you can use them instead of being used by them. For example, you have a pattern of eating food and then digesting it and pushing it out. That's a part of nature. That's a pattern that's locked into this matrix, so to speak. Yet there's a way to master that. It starts with what people call fasting. When you fast, it sets different patterns and motions for the body. Same thing with sex, right? Everyone has a pattern of getting turned on, going through the act, and then the afterwards. And that circulation of energy and chemistry, part of nature that human beings are always going to do. Something different happens even when you break that cycle, right? It's called celibacy or semen retention or whatever. After 24 hours, there's a change in your mental pattern and in your biology. There's going to be a change after 72 hours. There's a change after a week, right? And you only know this if you pay attention. But all these different changes and cycles are different. What's a good word? Different octaves of nature that you're aligning to. That's why when you see certain saints or ascended holy people or whatever, there's certain patterns that they have stepped into that the average person doesn't do, because they're slowly removing themselves from the lower patterns of nature. Let me know if that answers your question or not. Mr. West's question: I've been researching and studying Pascal Beverly Randolph. Do you have a session in your archives about him? I do not. I've mentioned him, here and there. Hell, actually, me and my cousin were actually talking about him just the other day. See, I'm going down the path of, the Golden Dawn and their affiliates, Dion Fortune and Ernest Butler, etc. The other side of that path is Madame Blavatsky, Theosophy. Pascal Beverly Randolph is related to that group. So I haven't really studied members of that group. Two main branches of Western occultism. I'm on this branch. So to answer your question, no. Kevros SS God says, how do I reach another level of awareness inside dreams, like controlling them? I'm aware that I'm dreaming, but can't control the dream. Okay, so the practice for dreams takes place in reality, and the practice for reality takes place in dreams. This is a big lesson that I've been going through off and on, obviously, because that's a part of the science. You're going to have to learn how to lean less on the conscious mind's activities and lean more on the subconscious. What I mean by that is, most all of us have a tendency to rationalize and use logic and try to make it make sense. We're leaning very hard on the ego mind, the left brain. If what you're wanting is more mastery in the abstract reality, you've got to learn to transition from leaning in heavily and entirely on logic mind and learning how to utilize the abstract mind. In other words, try things like taking a book that you feel intimidated by, and don't get all, oh, you're scared of nothing. Even me, like, say I might get a big ass book that I thought was really interesting, but then I start reading it, I'm like, damn, this is going to take me like a long time, right? Take a book like that and actually trust your subconscious mind. Open up a page, run your finger over all the words, flip the page, do it on the next, flip it, read the book like that. Don't logically read the book. Let your subconscious mind read the book. Try things like that. Try just looking at the pictures, right? Try whenever you're looking at these yantras or these sigils or things like that. Allow yourself to accept those as sufficient data transfer, right? You ever have a book like Demons of Magic or 72 Angels of Magic or some Goetia book, and it's like you see the sigil, but then it's like, well, I got to read what it does and I got to read all this other stuff to really get it. Well, maybe skip that part and allow yourself to focus only on the symbolic. Do you get what I'm saying here? What I'm saying is train yourself in the art of allowing the subconscious mind's processes to be sufficient enough. Because look, when using your left brain, there's a level where you feel like, okay, I've sufficiently learned this, right? You might have to read the whole chapter, think about it in the shower, da-da-da-da-da. Then you feel like, okay, I've sufficiently learned it. Take that level, that benchmark, that check mark for, okay, I get it, and try doing that with your subconscious. What's your subconscious process for learning something? Is there anything in your life that you already allow yourself to just accept with your subconscious? Yes. You watch movies, don't you? You listen to music, don't you? You read a book. Not read a book, but cartoons, comics, anime. You just sit back and absorb all that and feel. It's about trusting the intuition, right? You ever wake up one day and it's like you have the song in your head and then you're like, I got to listen to that song. And you go to YouTube or whatever app you use and play the song, and then you feel a certain kind of way. Train yourself to be led by the subconscious mind, and you'll find that your relationship with it transfers over to the dream. That's what I'm saying to you. Let me know if that helps or if it doesn't. Peace, DB31. Catch you on the replay. Trey Naroge, peace. Trey asks, how would you go about going deep into your shadow? I get the feeling I'm not going as deep as I could be going. So first of all, you're not. And that's great that you recognize that. So, it's 11:11. 11:11. You recognize that you're not going as deep as you could. How do you know that? How do you know that? What lets you know that? Is it the way that you feel in your body? Is it a voice in your head that's telling you that? Is it something that you see how do you know that you're not going as deep as you could be? What would it take for you to say, I have gone deep enough? Using that same criteria. Is there a feeling that you get? Is it something that you're saying to yourself, something that you're seeing? First off, identify the benchmark for going deep or not going deep enough. Identify that first. After you do that, it'll be a whole lot easier to fulfill that criteria. How do I know when I've had enough coffee? It's not something that I've seen. It's not something that I hear. It's definitely a kinesthetic feeling. And once I've had enough coffee, I stop drinking it. I don't even finish the cup. But really, when it comes to going deep in your shadow, what we're dealing with is self-awareness. We're dealing with self-awareness. Becoming aware of the shadow and going deep with the shadow is about understanding why you do what you do. Why you do what you do. So everything that you do, you should be aware of why you're doing it. I mean everything, not just when you're being spiritual. When you're like, I'm hungry, and you decide to go to McDonald's and get a number 4. Why do you pick that? Why do you pick McDonald's? Why do you go all the way out there instead of just going to the dollar store and getting a 4-pack of pudding snacks, right? You do everything specifically for a reason. The end of shadow work is knowing exactly why you do everything that you do. And then becoming free from those influences to do whatever you want to do. That's free will. You don't have free will until you understand why you do what you're already doing. You don't have free will until you understand why you do what you're already doing. You still get unmanageably sad. You still get unmanageably angry. Why? Let me know if that answers the question. Allah, Akbar, Allah, Rakbar. Alden says, is there a difference between creating a servitor and working with elementals? Yes. So an elemental you can think of as probably the most raw form of working with spirits, so to speak. Usually when somebody wants to work with a spirit, they're looking for a spirit that's already formed. They're looking for a servitor. They're looking for something that's already been used many times and can be described. They're looking for something that's already manifested, something that's already been conditioned, something that's already been ran through. Now, if you want spiritual energy that has not been formed and pressed together and given purpose or given a soul, spirit energy, they don't have souls. Working with elementals is almost like you're going into the sandbox mode and creating your own, which we all have done. every single one of us, even people who are not into this, a telltale sign that an elemental or servitor is at play is when there's pattern-based repetitive behavior. If you have some type of compulsive behavior, addiction, or even if you just like to wear mismatched socks, patterns are a sign that there is an elemental, a servitor at play. So the difference really that we're dealing with is the degree of how formed and how conditioned it is. You know if that makes sense or not. Thank you, DB31. DB31 says, P.S. Hit the like button, people watching. Once again, the ratio to likes to viewers is not up to par. Hit that like button. Peace, MC Maestro. MC Maestro says, gonna dip out. Ask some good questions, y'all. Oh, yeah. Mudjacuous says, is it true, in your opinion, that we live in a parallel dimensions? And if so, what happens to us in this dimension when our other selves die in the others? I feel like the last one of me. Well, the same thing happens when someone in this dimension that is not you dies. The manifested human being, with its memories, personality, likes and dislikes, its senses of hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and all that good stuff, is a byproduct of a soul that exists in another plane. But you're not the only byproduct of that soul. There are multiple byproducts of a single soul. When the byproduct dies, it does nothing to the soul, nothing detrimental at least. Even when the mind and the spirit dies, it still doesn't really do much to the soul. So the incarnated human being is kind of a one-off experience. That soul does incarnate in multiple places, multiple dimensions, even multiple matrices, so to speak, right? It doesn't have to just be human. When you think about alternate realities and alternate dimensions, it's not necessarily the way that you look exactly in a universe that looks just like this one. It could be any combination. So much so that it wouldn't even make logical sense. Now, sometimes what happens, because of all the countless incarnations, some are just rocks, trees, and some are super advanced entities, right? Some of those super advanced entities have an understanding of what's going on. And some of those super advanced entities can pass information and do pass information along to other incarnations. Absolutely. That's what happens when you start to have your awakening. But what the point that I'm making is the centralized you is not this body or this personality. The centralized you is in that soul, so to speak. This you individual that just asked that question, this is an extension of the centralized you. This is not the centralized you. So in other words, there's alternate versions of the centralized you, but not this incarnation of you. Starline asks, how are you able to comprehend such advanced occult books like the Cosmic Doctrine or the Mystical Kabbalah? Do you think that Lucifer sigil made you sharper because you're mad smart in regards to this? Well, that question is well timed because I'd have to go back to what the previous answer I just gave. There came a point in my development where I clearly saw a switch, and I've talked about this before, where most of what I was saying in these videos was coming from the intellect and the ego. And I used to have a fear that there would be a question I can't answer, or maybe I'll get something wrong or something like that. But what happened one day is that that switch flipped and the answers stopped coming from the intellect and they started coming from a deeper place. And if I could describe what's happening, it's as if instead of the intellect trying to impress another intellect, I feel like I can identify the soul of the question itself. I can identify the deeper layer of that soul. But the thing that's understanding the soul of the question is coming from another part of me, so to speak. That centralized aspect that I just mentioned. So look, when you're working with spirits and angels and demons and gods and goddesses and all that stuff, you're dealing with other versions of you. You're dealing with other versions of you. As I just said, the centralized aspect of you is not this physical human incarnation. The centralized aspect of you is on a much higher plane. It's your personal Kether. That's what you're working on this tree of life. This God that you're searching for is you on another level, not the physical human body. The physical human body is one of many expressions of who and what you actually are. Lucky for you, lucky for us, we're in a position to be able to come into an awareness of that truth. That's what the spiritual path is all about. Oh, wow. So in the chat, I am 12 minutes behind. Is that right? Let me speed up and get to some of the newer questions. Ram O says, someone I listened to said the best way to get into the shadow is to recognize when it appears. Working with the shadow can be a metaphor, like shining a light into it. It disappears. But once it comes up, then you proceed to take action, to put the work behind it. Plus, any wisdom that Travis is speaking is applicable as well. Mr. West says, question, I have 2 bronze mini statues of Baphomet and Lilith, which symbolizes masculine and feminine energy on my altar. Would you say this is a good combination? Absolutely. Absolutely. In your personal cosmology, you could see Baphomet as Samael, who is the consort to Lilith. 2 energies that go together. Shiva and Shakti, right? Lilith is Samael's Shakti. Samael is Lilith's Shiva. The divine masculine, divine feminine. It doesn't matter where you pull it from, right? You could say Adam, Eve. You could say Samael, Lilith. You could say anything, right? A lot of people like it to be spooky and evil and dark or whatever, and that's cool if it feels good. But what you're ultimately getting at is a symbol that represents to you specifically the core elements of spiritual masculinity, spiritual femininity. And what we're talking about is hairy, muscular penis and not soft, curvy vagina. We're talking about the giving aspect and the receiving aspect. It's the best way to put it in simple terms. In order for something to be received, it has to be given. And in order for it to be given, it has to be received. They complement each other. So the whole thing is you've got that balance represented on your altar. Perfect. You got the subconscious and the conscious, the left brain and the right brain. Excellent. At one point, I just straight up had penis and vagina on my altar. Right now, I've just got the puss here, but That's because I recently did a cleaning off of my desk. Luxury Newman, peace. Luxury Newman says, how do you build trust with that different place? I experience the same when writing, especially. So the whole thing about trust and not trusting is, ask the question, what are you trying to protect? What are you trying to hold on to, right? If you're experiencing distrust with that, perhaps there's a part of you that is still trying to remain in control in a place where it's not necessary. Trying to remain in control of a place that's not really a place to be controlled. At least not with the faculties that you're trying to control it with. Like trying to control the ocean with 10 fingers. It's not really, doesn't really work that way. That's why fish have fins and gills. Fish and aquatic creatures have an apparatus for moving through that environment. The human body is designed as an apparatus to move through this environment. Likewise, the subconscious mind, the astral plane, the etheric plane, these are also apparatuses that require a specific skill set, a specific apparatus to move through. So perhaps the lack of trust comes from not necessarily acclimating to that specific environment. M3VM3 says, what are demons really? Are they aspects of us? And what does that mean and how we engage with it? Do you think having caution is misplaced and from a place of fear? Well, you would certainly know if it's coming from a place of fear, right? There's caution that comes from fear that is mainly due to ignorance, right? Not knowing. The definition of ignorance is not having knowledge and not willing to have knowledge on a particular thing. So of course, fear is going to come from a place of not understanding and not knowing. However, with education, you eliminate that possibility. With education and experience, the need for fear is replaced with actual caution, right? There's a way to be cautious without being afraid. When you understand what's happening, when you understand the system, when you understand yourself, if you're having caution in how you move, that's not coming from fear, that's coming from wisdom. It's coming from wisdom. So what are demons really? Are they aspects of us? So like I said before, you got to understand what us is. You got to understand what me is, what you, what I is. You are not the physical body. You're not the memories or the emotions or the mind or the personality or the ego. That is an extension of you. What you are is something way more subtle and way more unconditioned, right? Way more unconditioned. So from that point of being pure consciousness, pure unconditioned consciousness with no qualities, with no body, with no memories, with no sense of time and space, right? With that over here, when that comes into interaction with the material plane, the closer that unconditioned soul gets to the material plane, right, with every step of getting more dense and closer to the material plane, it begins to take on qualities. It has to. Because the material dimension, the manifest dimension, is the dimension of qualities. The material plane, the organic plane, is the dimension of qualities, because it is the dimension of space and time. In order to exist in time and space, you have to have an apparatus to move through time and space. You've got to have a body, and a body is subject to time, aging. Beginning, middle, and end is what it is. So what happens is that pure soul, as it gets closer to the manifest dimension, it begins to take on qualities. Many of those qualities are abstract and difficult to understand. Some of them are very clear, especially the closer you get to the manifest dimension. But by the time you get to the manifest dimension, that soul has taken on so many qualities that now you've become a man with skin color and history and heritage and experiences and all that other good stuff. But before you became that, you also went through the process of different emotions, emotional patterns. We call them karma, right? You also went through the process of having different emotional patterns, mental patterns. And many of these patterns have been symbolized as living entities, right? Because let's face it, as a manifested human being, you're not this rare special creature that no one's ever seen before. We've seen trillions of you on this plane, countless human beings. And there's only so many experiences that a human being can have. Only so many. There's only a handful of emotions that a human being can experience. Not a million, not 100, barely 10. There's only a handful of emotions and experiences and types of relationships that a human being can have. So we typify them, we stereotype them, we symbolize them. Long story short, this is where you get your demons from. This is where you get your angels from. They're symbolic representatives of processes, of energies, of cycles, of patterns. Now, many of these cycles and patterns are happening beneath the conscious level, right? Most of us don't understand why we feel the way we feel, why we think the way that we think. But our behaviors are the result of patterns that are happening on the subconscious level. Now, like I said, there's not a million different experiences. There's only so many. So as humans do, we typify them, we stereotype them, and we anthropomorphize them. We give them personalities. We give them wings and claws. We give them mythologies. And they become timeless, and they affect everybody, right? They affect entire cultures. So to say, are these demons really aspects of us? Well, if you look at it from the angle that I just explained, absolutely. In fact, everything you are is composed of different combinations of demons, angels, whatever you want to call these typified, stereotyped patterns of behavior, thought, and emotion. So when you have the knowledge of that, are you still afraid of working with Baphomet, with Lilith? Because guess what? If you know anything about Baphomet or Lilith or any spirit, you know that they represent processes, don't they? They symbolize processes, don't they? And they have a very real effect on your psyche, on your emotions, on your body, and on your relationships, don't they? But if you're ignorant, foolish, and you think that these are scary creatures waiting in hell to bite you, to scratch you, to chew you, to yell at you, if you're thinking that, then of course you'd be afraid. Of course you'd tell people they're going to hell if they work. You know what I'm saying? So like I said in the first place, it's about understanding what it is that you're actually doing. Let me know if that answers your question or not. Starline says, you're Damon. Yeah, exactly. Right? Look at where that word came from. Look at where the word, like, go back and look at where demon came from. Look at where the word daemon came from, and like what those words actually mean. Archetypes, personal archetypes at that. Mm-hmm. You spoke too soon, says false prophet. Absolutely. The falsest of the I'm the falsest prophet that ever existed. In fact, every single thing that comes out of my lips is an absolute lie, right? An absolute lie. If I told the truth, I would melt. I would melt into sweet iced coffee, iced tea. See, I can't even get my drinks right. And make sure you subscribe so you can get some more false prophecies and southern iced tea. Yaya M16 says, what is your favorite color? Wet pink, specifically. TVY Ty says, do you do consultations? Absolutely. I do. I do. Uh-oh. Let me scroll back up. How did I get that low? Nice, nice. Kerplunk785 says, what is an altar for? Who do you pray to? Do you believe in Jesus? So an altar is like specifically a representation of the subconscious mind. It is a sacred space that is utilized as a representation, as your access point to the unconscious. It's your personal access point to that. Who do you pray to? Whatever symbol I'm working with at the time. Do you believe in Jesus? Absolutely. Absolutely. Cool, cool. Mr. West says, thank you, Brother Trav, for answering my questions. I'll be listening in the background and learning. Gratitude. Thank you. Thank you for asking. Because it's a two-way thing, right? The questions that are asked help me to access and pull some of this stuff out. So thank you right back. Gratitude to you. Starline says, truly a daemon is that genius part of you that's always sleeping, lurking, waiting for your awareness to notice its subtle energy, helping guide you. It's all you, though. Absolutely. TVY Ty says, I've left no stone unturned and tried to work with deities, angels, demons, and ancestors, all as aspects of myself, but only had success channeling Abraxas. So analyze your criteria for success. What does success mean to you? What does success mean in terms of working with the spirit? Perhaps your criteria could be expanded. Maybe you actually did have success, but like I said, what are you using as that criteria for success? Could it be too strict? Could it be too loose? Nikki Renee says, what is something you would like to tell the collective through these trying times? Absolutely, I would like to say, focus on that which you want to manifest. Focus all of your attention only on that. None of your attention on the things that are bothering you, on the things that you're complaining about, on the ills and evils of this world. Spend no time focused on police brutality, on racism, on stock market crash, on Donald Trump is going to do this, and Bill Gates and whatever. All the stuff that these other folks are talking about, reptilians and end of the world and conspiracy, Illuminati. Focus on what you wish to incarnate, what you wish to manifest only. None of that other stuff. That's what I would say. Graham O says, why did you think your soul chose to reincarnate during this specific time? Really, it's mathematics. It's mathematics. So it's all about balance. Balance. Both sides of the equal sign have to be balanced. There's certain experiences, there's certain vibrations. And look, when I say vibration, I mean like right now, snapshot of how you are in this very moment. There's certain phrases going through your head. There's certain emotions on cycle. There's certain gestures and patterns and different things that you're doing right now today. Within the last 24 hours, there's a set of things that you're doing. And each of those things has its own frequency, its own vibration, right? When you get angry, that's a vibration of how your consciousness is moving through the mind itself. When you eat your bowl of cereal and your Slim Jims and all that other stuff, all those chemicals ingesting in your body and going through your bloodstream, that's a specific vibration. So if you expand that through a lifetime, the human being's experience equates to a specific frequency and a specific vibration. And the soul needs that to balance itself on its side. Truly said, the soul doesn't need to do anything, and it never did anything. But as I mentioned, the simple fact that the soul is in contact with the material plane, each step of that descent left an imbalance. And in order to return to that state of purity, you got to correct those imbalances. This is the story of Inanna descending into the underworld. Remember that story? If you understand Sumerian mythology, at every step she had to leave behind one of her protective jewels or a piece of her armor. She had to leave something behind at every step until she was completely stripped naked, and they crucified her, right? That's where we get the crucifixion of Christ from. At every step of that descent into humanity, a piece of divinity was left behind. So for you to be incarnated in this specific time means that there are experiences in this specific life that need to be in order for you to reach a certain level of harmony on those higher planes. That's the savior myth. That's the savior myth in all cultures. From Dionysus to Attis to Horus to whoever. All right. Let's see. Starline says, like the 9 levels of Dante's Inferno. Exactly. Exactly. All right. How y'all feeling? How y'all feeling? I think I'm gonna answer maybe two more questions. Maybe two more. Give me just a sec here. Special thank you to my moderators for doing the Lord's work, for keeping it clean and classy. I think that my nos is defrosted sufficiently. Flipping pancakes. Beautiful. Be right back. Oh, yeah. Rainwater, peace, and greetings. That one dude came in here and thought he had something to say. He came in here upset. He came into upset. Funny. But Animali got to him before I did. Okay. So, let's see. Where we at? Where are we at? Okay, Kashigi. Kashigi asks, Travis, can you explain how to empower thought forms and how to utilize the elements for self-empowerment and self-knowledge? Yeah. I mean, it's a whole process, right? Repetition is key. Repetition is key, and symbology is key. I did a live stream a couple weeks ago where I went through a whole process of how to anchor, how to access different states and how to anchor them with just a hand gesture. And in repeating that process, you'd be able to access those states a lot quicker than just trying to think your way into it. So how to empower thought forms? One of the best ways to empower thought forms and to utilize them for self-empowerment is to get into the state of that thought form as vividly and as deeply as you can and anchor it. Then break the anchor, go back to normal, and then get back into it, anchor it again. Repeat that process, break it, repeat that process, break it, so that in the real world, when the time comes that you want to summon it, invoke it, access it, you run that anchor and watch yourself fall into state effortlessly, almost like you tripped and went down the stairs into your best self. If you want specific instructions on how to do that, I would suggest signing up for my recent class, the Cosmic Focus Formula, where I give like 10, 12 different methods on how to do that in different ways and how to make it stick. What is past the astral realm? Are there politics among those higher densities? Okay, so a good way to think about this is, like I mentioned, at the very top, you could say pure, unconditioned consciousness. We call that your soul, Kether, whatever. At the very bottom is manifest reality, dense manifest reality. And this is the world that you see around you. Trees, idiots, arguing, sexing, all that stuff down here, the dense manifest expression of reality, and then you got the unmanifest, and the levels in between of soul gradually descending in density and vibration and becoming a manifested thing. Well, those steps of downgrading are the different planes, right? So you got the manifest dimension, you got the etheric plane, then you got the astral plane, then what's known as the mental plane, and then the causal plane, and then finally this soul level. Now, depending on where your study is, you might see 5 different levels, you might see 7, but the general rule of thumb is that what marks the difference of these different planes is how consciousness moves about. The physical plane, consciousness moves about through a physical vessel, and it moves in 6 directions: up, down, left, right, forward, back, and through time. So I guess you could say 7. But the higher up you go, it's almost as if the number of directions of movement are decreased. In the astral plane and the etheric plane, the movement is simply expansion and contraction. Expansion and contraction. In the mental plane, you can imagine how movement of consciousness is focus based from one point or another point instantaneously. So you ask the question, are there politics among those other densities? Well, yes and no, right? Yes, as far as because there are ways of movement, there are quote unquote rules, right? Simply descriptions of how consciousness are moving. But politics, as far as like good guy, bad guy, I like this, I don't like this, all that is mainly on the manifest physical dimension where human beings are, because we feel separated. The higher up you go, the more that there is a realization that there is only one existence, only one consciousness. The higher up you go, the more that that realization is evident. It's not very evident down here. Hence why everyone believes that we're also separate and different. Hence why everyone believes that we are these physical bodies. In truth, what you actually are is unmanifest. And I mean that literally. You are not manifest. What you think you are is, you think that you're something that's manifest. You think you're something that can be described. But what you actually are is unmanifest. It cannot be described because it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. It's not a thing that can be described. Okay, all right. Curve asks, do you still have desires and goals that you'd like to reach at the level you're at? I do. But I mean, it is different as far as like my expectation of the outcome. I know that before, when I had goals, I would be very emotionally passionate about them, especially if I don't feel like I'm reaching them in time. But I find that that doesn't really, the goals and desires that I have don't affect my temperament like they used to, which can be seen as a bad thing sometimes, because there may be days where I'm not really moving towards my goals. But I mean, I also recognize that I'm not wasting time. I'm still doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I think that there's a shifting, that might be a good way to describe it, a shifting between how I feel about my personal goals and understanding that there's work that's given to me, and I weigh the work that's given to me by my higher self with more importance and more seriousness than my personal goals. What I've learned is that the work that my higher self gives to me is fully paid for, so to speak. For example, if you're hired by the government to do a job, they're going to give you everything you need to do that job, right? They're not going to skimp on the resources. You're going to have a vehicle to get there. You're going to be fed. You're going to have a place to sleep. You're going to have the paperwork you need, the equipment you need, et cetera, et cetera. That's how higher self works. I understand that the job that higher self has for me is fully provided for. And that is also the job that the majority of my focus should be on, the majority of my time. And I also find that as a side result, let me put it this way also, the more that I align my personal goals with what spirit has for me to do, I find that they come to pass in accordance with the work that I'm doing. TVYTI asks, where can I request a consultation at Trav? Send me an email at travismagus777 at gmail.com. And then I'll send you an invoice and a Zoom link, and we can meet over Zoom and we can have a discussion. So send me an email at travismagus777 at gmail.com. Cosmic Puzzle Peace says, how would you describe being graceful in the process of magic? I would say that I would describe being graceful in the process of magic is trusting the steps, trusting the process, and not providing resistance to what your soul is giving you to do. The soul operates on a different method than the conscious mind does. The conscious mind, the ego, the personality, relies entirely on the past, right? The conscious mind says, well, this happened last time, so I don't know about that. The conscious mind only predicts based on memory and on the past. Intuition, soul, doesn't work that way. It already knows the end result, and it knows exactly what steps to take and when. So grace and being graceful in the process of magic is gradually learning to trust your intuition and acting on the intuition in spite of the conscious mind. And what you'll find is that you'll be in the right place in the right time, meeting the right people, doing the right things, and loving the whole process. The conscious mind will see the ups and it will see the downs and it will panic and get scared. Yet you don't act on any of that fear. You continue to trust intuition, and you'll find that you gracefully float through the whole thing. Those of you who are doing this work, you know what I'm talking about. You've experienced that. Becoming aligned with what my higher self would like me to get done. Right. I mean, hell, even the Bible talks about this. May I decrease so that you may increase in me. Natural Sister, peace. Welcome. Nefrayu, peace. I knew that you'd show up. I knew that you'd show up with this question. In fact, I almost considered making that the topic of this video, but alas, you have showed up. Nefrayu asks, I asked this earlier on another one of your vids. few hours ago. Trav, can you make a video about the intention for spiritual growth versus escapism? That Dion Fortune quote stuck with me. All right, so it really all boils down to self-awareness. It boils down to how well you know yourself or how much you don't. Most people are not aware of themselves. Look, it's just like, people dig up their nose and scratch their ass and do all stuff like that. And they're not aware that they're doing it, right? They'll sit there in Burger King and put their hands down their ass and scratch. And some people even bring it back out and sniff. Most people are not aware of these minuscule behaviors that they do. Some people just zone out, right? And they're not aware of it. There's all kinds of things that people do that displays a lack of awareness of self, right? So oftentimes, most of the time, people are experiencing pain and suffering. All sentient beings are experiencing suffering, which also means that at all times, sentient beings are looking for ways to escape suffering. And that's a big part of laziness, right? Not wanting to do certain things because you don't want to endure any extra suffering, especially the suffering of discipline. So when somebody sees something like spirituality, it can speak to them on a level of, hey, if I do this, I won't have to take accountability. I have someone to blame. I don't have to do the necessary work to fix myself. I can just run through it. And that type of person is usually not even aware that they're doing that. So first off, if you're asking yourself, am I just doing escapism? You might not be. You might actually be the type of person who is growing. To ask that question displays a sign of growth. But most people who are doing that are not even aware of themselves. They're just going with the flow, probably because it looked cool. Someone that they believe is cool is doing it. That's the beauty of this art form. If you're actually doing the work, even if you entered into it for escapism reasons, if you're actually doing the work, you start becoming more and more self-aware. You start to become aware that, hey, I am doing this for escapism reasons. I need to fix that. The challenge will come where you test yourself, and it'll be a point that says, yo, either we're going to shape up or things will not get better. That's the beauty of it. So that's the thing. If you're using it for escapism, you probably don't even realize it because it points to a deeper problem. There's a lack of self-awareness. However, if you're actually doing the work, you become aware of that escapism tendency and you start to heal it naturally. Let me know if that answers your question or not. I guess I could go back and extend that into a longer video. Framestar Films, peace, my brother. Corrupted Catnip says, if there's time for one more question, Trav, how can I become more courageous without dipping too far into my clip-off? I admit I have a lot of fears, even of my own potential power. So, in this vast ocean of spirituality, it helps to have a goal. It helps to have some type of purpose. Because if you don't have a sense of purpose, you're just out here doing whatever. And that's not really going in any specific direction. The astral plane is a massive place. Most of it is uncharted. So if you don't have direction, if you don't have purpose, you're just out here, right? And you're going to go towards what feels good only. You're going to run from what feels bad. So to answer, how do I become more courageous without dipping into my clip-off? Choose a purpose. And it can change in the future. That's fine. It can change. But right now, choose a goal, not something that you can easily achieve. Push yourself a little bit harder. Push yourself to do something that is impossible, spiritually wise, understanding wise. Push yourself to do something greater than your current capability and stick to it. Like I said, it may change, it may alter, but by choosing a goal and focusing on it and acting towards it, you're going to quickly start to find what you don't want to do and what you need for your development. But you won't find that if you're not going in a specific direction anyways. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, even if you set forward on a course to achieve a certain thing, even if that's not the thing that's meant for you, you're going to find what's meant for you along the way. And it won't necessarily be based on laziness or whatever. It'll be based on the fact that you're honing your focus and sharpening your focus into a straight beam. And that's really what a lot of this is about. Mastering your focus, mastering your mind. Doesn't matter what on. It just matters that you're actually in process of doing that, of shaping yourself. Stuffed dog. Peace. M. Kazigawa says, how much of your perspective changes when you actually retain Frank Rudolph Young knowledge? Well, that would be subjective to the reader, wouldn't it? Have you read his work? That would be my question. I know that personally it helped to give me frameworks to practice with. And through practicing those frameworks, my perspective did change in how I understand how psychic ability works. Because I've actually had frameworks to practice through, again, to shape and hone my focus in that particular subject matter. So I would say that if you're actually practicing those texts, specifically in cyclomancy, you're given opportunities to exercise. And the more you do it, hopefully your perspective will change, specifically in the realm of, oh, this is very possible. And there's even more that I can do with it. Mhm. Oh, Lydia Castro seems to be experiencing technical difficulties. I think she made a typo. Okay. So, yeah, just a second. Ego Trip says, what's your opinion on Rudolf Steiner? I am fond of Rudolf Steiner, the work that I've read. Um, but as I mentioned in the stream before, Western occultism primarily branches off in two directions. The direction of what the Golden Dawn type stuff and Theosophical Society type stuff. I find myself primarily focused on the Golden Dawn type stuff, not so much on the Theosophical Society type stuff. So my reading of Rudolf Steiner is limited to about 4 books, but what I have read is outstanding. Outstanding. Okay. All right. So I mentioned before that I was probably going to do like 2 more questions at that time. I think this is a pretty decent live stream. We had some really good questions, really good answers. Lydia Cacharo made a typo. But I mean, it's pretty common that these bots don't seem to be very good at spelling, which is weird because that's their only weapon. I would compare it almost to like a lightsaber duel, but I have yet to see anybody that is worthy of stirring up any amount of emotion in me. I respond to them, for you guys, really. 12-12. 12-12. Cosmic puzzle piece. It is 11-11 where you are. All right, so yeah, that's about it. Good live stream. I'm about to jump on Fortnite for a little bit. You know what we're doing on Saturday? We're continuing our session of the cosmic doctrine. And those of you who are students of the occult know that that's some heavy artillery, but we're toting it pretty well, ain't we? Mm-hmm. Tomorrow we might do another session of Handbook for the New Paradigm. We're on a roll right now. Hey, why not? About time for me to start cranking up the cyclomancy. It's been a minute, but Oh, that's a strange pickup line. Arf says, "Don't you have any broken bones because you fell from heaven? Is your name Wi-Fi because I fell connecting with you?" Oh, how sweet. All right, so that's about it. That's about it. Fortnite time for me. Hope that you got some wonderful things to digest. Good to go. And I didn't even have to crack open the NOS. We can save that for later. All right, so my squad is waiting. I guess I'm going to peace out. I love y'all. I appreciate y'all. This is always great fun, great experience for me. When Thursdays come and I don't go live, I kind of feel like I let you all down in a way. So I try my best to make sure that I get on here. Usually what takes me so long is like I try to think of like a good new topic or something like that, and then I end up thinking too hard and not coming up with anything, throwing away too many ideas, and then it's like 10 o'clock and it's like, dude, just get online and talk. It'll come out. But enough of that. Enough of that. All right, I'm out. I'm out. Thank you all so much. Thank you all so much. This is TK Trav, aka Travis Magus, here with LVX777. I love you. Peace.